What's up, y'all? This is Ian with TechSport. We're here today to install an oil cooler kit on the Shop GR Corolla. And if you check another video that we're going to post after this, it's going to be for front rotors and pads on this. We're doing some track prep for a track day upcoming this weekend, and we can't wait for y'all to see the results on the oil cooler and the brake kit. All right, so first thing that we're gonna do is lift the car up. If you're at home, you're gonna wanna put the car on jack stands, use a creeper, make sure everything's safe before you get started. But the first thing that needs to come off is this under tray. So let's go ahead and lift the car up. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is use a 10mm socket to remove the 10 bolts securing the under tray across the bottom of the car. Next, we're going to use a flathead screwdriver to remove this clip securing the bumper to the wheel liner and this clip. All right, that's loose. We're taking off this pop clip securing the brake duct to the inner fender liner here. This side of the bumper is free. Very gentle with these. You can usually persuade them out without messing them up too much. There she goes. Yeah, we're coming down to take off the fasteners securing that top shroud above the radiator. Now we're going to take off the 7 pop clips securing this top tray above the radiator. And we're going to start by persuading each one just a little bit till it pops. This might even come straight out. Sure does. Now we can remove this top shroud and set it aside. We're going to use a 10mm socket to remove the 3 10mm bolts securing the top of the bumper to the vehicle. Should be all 3. So we're just going to use a pair of needle nose pliers to disconnect this front ADAS sensor that goes behind the Toyota emblem on the bumper. And now, once this is disconnected, we can go ahead and start gently pulling the bumper back, where there's going to be 2 connectors to remove for each one of the fog lights. All right, so we're going to gently start pulling each side of the bumper to release the clips and make sure that we don't drop it completely because we still have these fog light connectors still on. There is a clip right here that you can lift up on to release that center part of the bumper so it starts to slide out from the top. And there it goes. Toyota gave us nice little handles right here. And see our fog light connectors and one more ADAS connector down here. That's out. Fog light down here. All right, next, we're gonna remove the foam from the crash bar. This just comes straight out. Super easy. Set it aside for where the bumper is. Next, we're gonna remove the 4 bolts securing the crash bar to the car, and those are 14mm. For these 14s, we're switching to the big dog, the 1/2 inch, because he's got a lot of torque on him, but we'll get started. All right, after we remove these two connectors up top, there's this final 14mm bolt down here. Crash bar after that should be free to come down. Just make sure you're holding on to it. It's just a nut. Nice, aluminum, love it. We're just gonna simply use a flathead screwdriver to disconnect the pop clips here on this bracket all the way across to these two on top from this little duct here to get everything removed. Now the crash bar is out of the way. Instead of a flathead screwdriver, might try the pop clip pliers. These things become brittle even when new. All right.
The wall of shame.
The wall of shame. Pop clip. First pop clip to break. So we're going to go to the other side and we're going to be extra gentle. Extra gentle. Get it started with the screwdriver. Just gently. Look at that. Such a well-behaved clip. Here we go. And I can probably get this one loose too, very easily. But not without getting that out. Which is now going to be extra fun. Already proven to be brittle.
Hours later.
It's ugly, but that's why these are considered consumables. So now that this is loose, we can move this out of the way to take this air shroud off of the side of the radiator and AC condenser. So we are using a screwdriver to push and release the clip that's securing this air guide to the front of the radiator. Yeah, we're working a little blind, so we know it's there, we know we're pushing on it. It's helpful to use these kind of needle nose pliers back here to get this little clip disengaged for the air guide. After that, it should come out. There we go. All right, next we're gonna use a 10mm socket to remove this here bolt, securing the hood latch to the radiator support. I think it's bracket time. All right, so now we've got the upper bracket for the oil cooler installed, secured by the same 10mm bolt that you just removed from the hood mount, and the one provided M6 12mm long bolt. All right, now we're ready to install the lower mounting bracket for this oil cooler core. It mounts right here using the supplied bolts. Going through here. On each side. And we've got ourselves a couple of washers and nylock nuts. Leave a little wiggle room before we cinch those all the way down. For the core, this is a dual pass Mishimoto core. It's very solid bar and plate style core that should do exceptionally well reducing the oil temperatures on track. So it's going to go this way with our bracket supporting the lower mounting points and the uppers. All All right, so now we have the three 13mm bolts securing the oil cooler to the mounting brackets, the upper and the lower. The lower only has one, the upper has two. So we're gonna start with the uppers, just getting those tight. And they do have rubber isolators between each side, so you should be good to go once you get this thing about a half turn past tight. Let's get our tins back on here. All right, that core is now mounted, looking good. All right, so with this left side air shroud on the Mishimoto oil cooler kit, you can drill out 2 holes to clear the lines that come through for the A-end fittings. However, we were struggling to tighten down this bottom A-end fitting with very little clearance. And so since this is optional, and we are going to optionally remove it and secure the left side of this bottom air guide with a zip tie to the hose here. The hoses both come down underneath the intercooler charge piping, and they're gonna go down underneath to where we're gonna install the sandwich plate next. All right, so now that we've got the oil cooler lines connected to the core up front and ran underneath the car, underneath this intercooler pipe, the next step would be to remove the bolts just around the service panel underneath the under tray of the car. You'll notice that the whole under tray is off. That's because Austin, while rallying the car, it took a hit, and so the whole thing is off right now, giving us plenty of access and visibility underneath the car. So the next step is going to be to remove the oil filter from the oil filter housing here, and that has not been over tightened, so we can spin this off by hand, and we've got our tray underneath to catch anything that spills. We'll let that drain and clean it up. Spin a new OEM filter on it after we get the sandwich plate on. All right, so what we got here is the thermostatic sandwich plate for the Mishimoto oil cooler kit. First thing we're gonna do is install the front fittings on here. Each of those has a nice washer that goes on this end, and those are gonna thread in loosely, and we'll cinch them down. All right, so we got the fittings on here. We're gonna use our -10 wrench to get those cinched down. All right, so now we're gonna get some oil, get that seal a little wet before we put it on the car. We got our Motul 300V 020, top of the line for what we're gonna be doing with it, which is tracking it. So we're just gonna lightly wet that rubber gasket before we bring it over to the car and install it. All right, so now we've got our sandwich plate with the sealing ring lightly oiled, and we're gonna come up here to the oil filter housing and stick it right over there, and we're gonna use the supplied 25mm adapter lug to tighten that down. So now we're gonna use our -10 A-N wrench to go ahead and secure these oil cooler lines to the sandwich plate. We have not yet tightened this. We'll do that once we get the lines on. All right, so now we've got our torque wrench with a 1/16 socket or a 27mm socket to put the final lug adapter onto the sandwich plate. We're gonna go ahead and tighten that down. It's finger tight now to 30 foot-pounds. There it is. So now we've got a brand new Toyota OEM filter. Techsport.com is going to specialize in Toyota and Lexus OEM parts, so don't forget to hit us up whenever you're doing a routine oil change or an oil cooler install. So we're going to get a little bit of our 300V Motul here, lubricate that gasket before we put it on the sandwich plate, and bring it over to the car to install. So the next step of our oil cooler install is going to be optionally, but we're optioning for a full oil change. We're going to be putting the Motul 300V 0W20 in the sump because, again, this car is going to be tracked. We want the best of the best. We want fresh oil in it before we go to the track. So this is a 14mm socket for the drain plug on the pan. While the oil is draining from our GR Corolla's pan, we've got our OEM style drain plug, but we got a little something special here. Techsport prototyped magnetic oil drain plug. All right, so we're gonna grab our Techsport magnetic drain plug back over to the GR Corolla and finish up this oil change before we fill things back up. All right, now we got our Techsport prototype magnetic oil drain plug installed. We're just going to torque it down to the OEM spec. Drain plug's back in, tighten down to OEM spec. We've got our sandwich plate installed and torqued down. We've got our new OEM oil filter. We've double checked the oil cooler hoses to make sure they're not rubbing on anything and making sure that those -10 AM fittings are all tight. So now we're ready to bring the car down and button everything up on the front end. Since we opted not to use the OEM air shroud, we were able to get our AN fittings on the cooler core cinched down good and tight. And since we're gonna leave it off, we just use a zip tie here and a zip tie there to make sure that this lower air shroud stays secure while we're on track and driving on the street. Now we're ready to fill up the sump with Motul 300V 020. All right, so we've already put in 4.5 quarts of the Motul 300V, and we're gonna put in another 1/2 quart to make it 5. So now we're getting the crash bar back on. We've got our 2 connector brackets back on. We've got it mocked up. We're ready to put these 14mm bolts back in. Now that we've reinstalled the aluminum front crash bar, it's time to put the foam piece in the front. That just pops right in. Now we're ready to go grab the bumper. Now that we got the bumper almost ready to install, we're going to reconnect these fog lights using the OEM wiring that's hanging out right around here. There's one, and there's number 2. Last but not least, we've got a couple of the ADAS connectors up here in the middle. There's one. And the last one, right there behind the Toyota emblem, it's in. So now we are ready to begin re-securing the bumper to the car. And once you get the bumper semi-aligned, you're going to find these little clips right on the headlights that help you locate all the pieces before you put your clips back in. All right, so now the bumper is back on loosely, And we're going to put the 3 bolts across the top here before we put that large plastic panel back on. And these are 10mm, by the way. All right, now we're ready for the top piece of the radiator shroud. That comes back down like so. And we're ready for some pop clips. All right, so we're securing all the 10mm bolts on the other side of the vehicle to get the bumper fully secured on the top and the bottom. All right, so now we got the bumper all buttoned up on the top and the bottom with all the bolts to secure it. And we are ready to wrap up this installation. So let us know what you want us to do next in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We got a lot more in store for you guys. Thanks.